Hi, in an earlier video I talked about special interests, and today I want to share a story of my son's special interests. If you want to hear more, stay tuned. So as you may or may not know, my son Brad is 29 and he has a very big special interest in our lives, and it's ceiling fans. He asks me sometimes if I remember when he first became interested in ceiling fans, and I really do have a clear memory of that. We were in North Adams, Massachusetts, in a Burger King. He was about 18 months old and he was sitting in the stroller, and there was a ceiling fan, and he just was watching the ceiling fan. Now, at this time, when he was 18 months old, we knew there was something going on with him. You know, we knew that there was some kind of probably disability coming. We weren't for sure it was autism yet, but we had a feeling that autism might be coming because of the diagnosis of tuberous sclerosis that he had. So I distinctly remember, just watching him watch the ceiling fan and thinking like, wow, he's really enjoying that ceiling fan, but then really thinking nothing of it. As he got to get older, we also noticed that he would just spin a lot of toys. His older brother Ryan had a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle helicopter, and Brad would just sit there just forever, just spinning the helicopter wheels. He would go outside and turn his bike over and just spin it. Any toy that he could have spin, he would make spin. So we knew that he really enjoyed spinning things. So another really distinct memory I have is, and actually there's quite a few of these memories, but I'd have Brad in the shopping cart and I'm rolling through Lowe's and Home Depot, just, doing stuff. And we would come to the lighting section where there'd be ceiling fans and whoop. And so he'd point, and so we'd just go stand under the ceiling fans, and he'd maybe be 2. And he'd just be fascinated and just stay there. And it's like, okay, Bradley digs ceiling fans, I know that. But then when I would roll away from the ceiling fans, he'd be in the cart and he'd be crying, and he would actually cry when I took him out of the ceiling fan department. As he got a little bit older, he discovered that in the newspaper, boy, this is aging myself, the newspaper. When the newspaper would come, on the Sunday newspaper, there'd always be ads in the newspaper. And so there'd be ads from Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, just a lot of companies, and he would flip through them and find little pictures of ceiling fans. So what he quickly began to do is get scissors and cut out the little pictures of ceiling fans. So he'd have stacks of just ceiling fan pictures out of the newspaper. And so what I would do for him is buying big giant pieces of poster board, and he would tape the picture of the ceiling fan onto the poster board. And once it was all filled up, and it might take 300 to 400 little ceiling fan ad pictures to fill up a poster board, then I would call up Kinko's and I'd say, it's Mary, I'm coming down. Turn on the laminating machine, because the big laminating machine would sometimes take a half hour to warm up. So I'd bring in the big poster board and we'd get it laminated, then it would go home and it would go on Bradley's wall. So he hasn't done that in years, probably since the 3rd or 4th grade, but we still have all of those. Another thing that Bradley discovered was he would just love to see ceiling fans in person. And he could look at a ceiling fan and say, oh, that's a Westinghouse model. It's a Casablanca 2, and it comes in this many colors, and it has a limited warranty of 15 years, and you can buy it here, here, and here, and it's $39.95. So we really started knowing that he really knew his ceiling fan stuff. What he would like to do is he got a camera for his birthday when he was about maybe 8. My mom and dad bought him a camera. And again, this is in the day where at a camera, you had to put film in it. So we would go around into places, and Bradley would just want to go on what he would call ceiling fan quests, and he would have to earn a ceiling fan quest. But we'd just go somewhere and he'd see a ceiling fan that he'd like, and he'd want to go in and take a picture of it, and he'd take a couple pictures of the ceiling fan. Then when the roll of film was full, we'd have to pay to have it developed. And it was such a nerve-wracking time for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope these ceiling fan pictures come out. Because if they didn't, he'd be very upset, and all he'd be able to think about was when the next time we could go back to that place and he could take that ceiling fan picture again. Which, if we went out of town to some place like Dollywood, which is very ceiling fan friendly, as Brad calls it, he would just think about going back to Dollywood, and it's like, dude, we were just at Dollywood. We're probably not going back there for a really long time. I have to say that sometimes it was just really hard on me that I would have this child who would want to go in and take pictures of ceiling fans. And again, Brad's 29, so this was like, 22, 23 years ago. People didn't know much about autism, and just a kid coming in with a camera wanting to take a picture of ceiling fans was really, really weird. And so I'd always have to explain to them, Brad has autism and he really likes pictures of ceiling fans. He collects them. And so they would say, okay, but there would just be sometimes I was just so beat up and just so tired of explaining that to people, and just so, just tired of the weird looks and the just kind of that, it just beat me down. And so at times like that, my older son would step in, or even my mom and dad would step in sometimes, and they'll be like, okay, don't worry, we'll bring him in a place like that. But there were times that we would just go out, we're just going to Subway, and if we were in a new Subway and there was a strip mall, he would have to go from one end to the strip mall all the way down to the other and look into every building and see if they had a ceiling fan. And it was kind of awkward because he'd be like this into businesses looking if they had a ceiling fan. And we had to teach him, like, Brad, that's just kind of weird, that's going to make people feel uncomfortable. But if there is a ceiling fan, man, he wanted to get it. It was a really expensive hobby because, again, if the ceiling fan was moving and we didn't get a good picture, we would not get that good ceiling fan picture, and he'd really worry and stress about when could we go back and get that ceiling fan picture again. So there was a time it really, really took up a lot of our life, but it was so important to him and he really enjoyed it. So recently there was an unfortunate story about a ceiling fan where Bradley went into a chiropractor's office in a town just one over from ours and asked if he could take a ceiling fan picture. And the chiropractor told him no and basically just kicked him out of her building. Now, Brad can be intimidating. He is 6'3" and 200 pounds, but he's a gentle giant. I don't find him threatening at all. We did teach Bradley, as he got older, that he has to ask people permission before he takes a picture of their ceiling fan, and that's really important. And when somebody says no, Bradley says, okay, thank you, and he uses what he calls perseverance, and maybe in a week or two, he'll go back and try to get it again. And 90% of the time, perseverance works out. Well, what we didn't know is that chiropractor actually called the police department and said that she felt like he was in her office scoping it out and that he was up to no good. So unfortunately, Bradley went back there for perseverance a couple weeks later, and she got very upset with him again and kicked him out and told him she was going to call the police, and she did call the police again. So he came home very upset that she threatened to call the police on him and just didn't understand why. So I did call her, and as a chiropractor, they work with a lot of people with autism. I thought I could just say, hey, my son has autism. He was just trying to get a picture. He didn't mean anything by it. And she told me, he was very threatening. Her patients were afraid of him, and that, they were worried for her safety. And she felt like he was taking pictures to case the place and maybe break into it later. And I was like, it's so obvious that he has autism. You're a professional. You work with people with autism. How do you not see it? But it was just like a really negative experience all the way around. I did call the police department and let them know what was going on, and they were very understanding and appreciated me calling because they were just thinking there's a big guy on the loose trying to get into doctors' offices and take pictures and threatening people. So I had a nice talk with the police department and we got it all cleared up. But that was just really upsetting for Brad. It was really upsetting for me too, because we've never gotten such a negative response as we had from that. It's really been, something that For a person with autism who sometimes can be hard to relate to because of limited social skills, it's really a way for people to connect with them about something that they're interested in, and they can build friendships and a common interest around it. Even if the person isn't really interested in ceiling fans, they know that Bradley likes them. And I've had people, like friends of mine, that are traveling the world and they will see a ceiling fan in Bangladesh and text me a picture of it so I can send to Brad. And that's really fun. And I really appreciate people thinking of my son like that. So that's Brad's ceiling fan story. As you can see, it's kind of long and complicated, but overall, ceiling fans have really brought joy to him and have given him so many opportunities. And in a way, I guess it would be like if you had a child who excelled at a sport or was really, good at something or was passionate about a hobby themselves. You would do things to help support your child do this. So I guess in a way, it's not really any different.